Welcome back everyone to my channel, and today I have a bit of time, so I'm going to do a short rant. However, it will be a rant on philosophy, so I've put on my suit and I've exchanged my bottle of beer against a goblet, which I actually stole at a bar in Belgium while on tour with a band, but please don't tell anyone, so people can take me seriously. However, I won't have cool violin music in the back because I'm still your friendly haystack talking about beer and books. Anyway, let's start talking about this. Cheers. I'm talking about the question of, is Malazan postmodern or not? Because first Andy Smith made a long video about Malazan being a postmodernist, post-structuralist critique of the fantasy genre. And then our high-faced Ruth and Bud made a video saying, well, it is more like akin to ancient mythology, because that's his point of view from a non-Western perspective. And now the question is it the one or the other? And I will cheat on this because I have a background in computer science and logic. And if you say, is it this or that, and you don't use an exclusive or, I can just say yes. To make things clearer, I would say Malazan is definitely influenced by all these things, but it's mostly contemporary literature. And I will explain what I mean by that. So, what do I mean by that? I would say that Malazan has a lot of influences that go all over the board. There's fantasy literature influences there. There is postmodern philosophy literature influences in there. There's post-colonial, post-imperialist studies influences in there. There is the influence of classical mythology in there. It's all in there, and certainly as a book written after the big, wave of postmodernism, post-structuralism, it definitely features some of the things we learned from that. Obviously, because a contemporary author is always the product, consciously or subconsciously, of all the things he has read, all the things he has learned, studied, written before. And that's what we get in Malazan, obviously. We get influences from postmodernism, we get influence from post-structuralism. We can certainly see that the ideas of the monomyth put forth with Joseph Campbell are not exactly what Erikson tries to achieve in his book, which is good because I think the damage that Joseph Campbell has done to modern fantasy literature is extremely high and way bigger than the good he has done, thanks to George Lucas. But that's the topic for another video when I'm way more drunk and raving, so we won't go deeper into that. It also shows influences from, magical realism. It shows influences of the classic sword and sorcery era of literature, and Erikson has admitted as much. So I would not call it a postmodern critique of the fantasy genre. I would just say that someone who has dealt with postmodernism, who has read postmodern literature and have most importantly read outside his chosen genre or subgenre, which is something any good writer should do, obviously. Read and write not only that one thing, because it will definitely expand your horizon and expand your craft. And as we all know, Erikson is a very good writer. He has done obviously all of that and trained all of these skills. So it's very important to acknowledge that things like postmodernism and post-structuralism are in there, and you can certainly read them into this. But on the other hand, we also know that there is things that go against the tenets of postmodernism, of post-structuralism, and deconstruction. The idea of the death of the author, for example, is something that I don't know if we can actually, Erikson wrote about this at length on his Facebook post recently, but those are also part of postmodern French philosophy, and they are not probably not espoused by this, not the way we should read books at this point. Another thing that we should look at is obviously, I say obviously a lot today, which is stupid because I shouldn't. Maybe this comes from this like shirt and everything. I feel more confident. So don't take me seriously. Anyway, I another thing is that what Andy said in his postmodernism video, the idea that people read their own structure, their own message, and so forth into the book. This is possible to a way, but on the other hand, we can certainly say that the book has specific themes, topics, and meanings that if you cannot read them out of the structure out of this book, you probably read it not in the wrong way, but you definitely missed a large point. So it's not just postmodern by the books, by the letter fiction, obviously, in my opinion, obviously. Shit. But it also takes a lot of influence from mythology, from historiography, from different mythologies, because all those things have influenced how we as human beings view our world, how we think about our world, and how we then shape the world that we live in right now or the world that we write books about. So, from my point of view, Ruthen is totally right that you can read the Malazan Book of the Fallen, obviously, as something that puts a modern fantasy spin on some of the oldest myths and legends we know about, from different parts of this planet and different eras of human history. That is also in there. And then there is the, simple Conan the Barbarian, Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser kind of 1930s pulp sword and sorcery stories in there. They're definitely in there, and I'm glad they're in there. The humor, the banter that you see in stuff like Fritz Leiber is in there. And it's a homage to a lot of those things. Actually, I should probably, do a video where I try to pick out all the like nods to different books of the fantasy genre, or not only the fantasy genre, I have found, or I imagine I found in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. And then, of course, yes, the playing with all these references and nods to other things. This is also a more metafictional approach that can be seen as a result of postmodernism. So, is it a postmodern critique of the fantasy genre? I would say no. Is it a fantasy book, or is it a narrative focused on certain themes in the guise of a fantasy epic that is influenced by postmodernism, post-structuralism, magical realism, and mythology? Of course it is, because that's exactly what you get. You get like myth level stories, but you also get them told with the sensibilities of modern literature. Literature. So it's all of that. And you can read it in whatever way you want, which then obviously, I guess, gives Andy the right when you say it's definitely, you can look at it from a postmodern perspective and say you can read it the way you want and you will be happy, which is nice, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the author follows a strict postmodern course. And I guess that's not the case. It's just influenced by those things because those things are part of our general discourse on literature and writing and storytelling and how we perceive the world, and have been for a while. They're now obviously being critiqued again by newer influences, which is good, but it's definitely in there. It's part of its DNA in a way, but it's not the end all be all, the be all end all of the Malazan Book of the Fallen. So that's it for today. I said it was rambly and it's going to be ranty, and I'll see you again real soon with a proper video on I don't know what yet. All right, cheers.